LA to Vegas, TV versus reality.
If you understood anything about modern aviation, you know these planes fly themselves. This baby is a technological marvel. Whoa.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. LA to Vegas is a TV show that only ran for one season, but it was hilarious. If you've ever been part of a flight crew, there are some funny jokes in here that really only a crew member would get. I put a link to it down in the description below if you want to check out the full season, but I'm just going to cover episode 1. Let's get into it.
Take it from me, Muay Thai will change your life. I myself started taking lessons, but I'm picking it up so fast that I'm also giving lessons.
Captain, cabin's ready and doors are closed.
All right, gentlemen, it's time to get high. And also fly this old bird. Just a little captain's joke. I never get high when I'm flying unless I mistime the edible. Another captain's joke.
You really think that's a good use of everyone's time?
If I can't have some fun with my passengers, why am I here?
To fly the plane. Go do that.
Ronnie, I haven't taken orders since I was in the Air Force or married. Fortunately, I was honorably discharged from both.
He still looks at pictures of his ex-wife and cries.
You want to do the honors, Alan?
Yeah.
No, you never touch this. This is Captain Dave time. Good afternoon, everyone. This is your captain and friend. I'd like to welcome you on Jackpot Airlines Flight 1610, service to Lost Wages. Why aren't you laughing?
I've read it like 1,200 times.
I've talked about my aunt, her being a flight attendant for many years, and she actually told me that they used to say this all the time when she ran from LA to Vegas. The pilot would say that.
Service to Lost Wages.
It's kind of funny because that's clearly a real thing. Hanging out and talking to the passengers is something that I used to like to do when I was flying only passengers, but it's kind of a mix between the pilots. Some pilots like to hide up in the flight deck, some like to hang out and talk with people as they get on the plane. Most of the time, though, you're not going to be standing there because you're kind of in the island blocking for the flight attendants to move back and forth. Usually what they'll do is they'll stand more in the doorway right here that blocks off the flight deck, but people can still get in and out, and it also lets the flight attendants be able to get from the galley to the passengers. Obviously, the pilots won't be making jokes, though, about doing drugs. In today's day and age, you can't make those jokes because somebody will hear you, think you're serious, and by the time you land, you're going to have the feds and the government and the FBI and the police and everybody waiting there to drug test you to see what's going on, and nobody's going to find that joke very funny.
Just a little captain's joke. I never get high when I'm flying unless I mistime the edible.
Please don't ever say that because you're going to get in a lot of trouble. I actually flew with a guy once that they walked up to the counter, the whole crew was there, they walked up to the counter, there was a passenger standing there, and the passenger said, "You guys look like you're still drunk." And the captain heard that, and the captain said, "Okay, great." And then he called scheduling and had everybody in the crew get drug tested and get alcohol tested. The reason being is because that guy making that statement in front of the passengers could make a shadow of a doubt that they were drunk possibly when they boarded the aircraft, and so to avoid any possible problem, he had everybody drug tested and everybody took a alcohol test or a breathalyzer to verify that nobody was drunk, and the flight was delayed several hours. So that's not a joke that you want to make to their crew because that's our license and obviously our career on the line. If we were to fly drunk, they can strip away all of your licenses. So even though I make a lot of jokes while I'm talking through these videos, those things are very serious for us. I talked about this in a previous video.
He still looks at pictures of his ex-wife and cries.
In that 30 Rock TV versus reality that I did with Matt Damon, I told you guys that because we change altitude so much, we have a tendency to cry more than other people. But the part about him handing the mic, typically the captain does that briefing, so they're not going to hand it to the first officer while people are boarding on the ground here. And most pilots are not going to get that excited about being able to make that announcement. Because what happens is, every other leg, meaning every different flight, you have one pilot flying and the other pilot is working on the radios and talking with air traffic control. That pilot is also going to make the announcement to everybody in the back of the plane while they're in flight. So most pilots aren't going to get that excited to make that announcement. However, there are a few pilots that love talking on that PA system and making those announcements. I don't know why. Since this is episode 1 here, let's take a look at what is real on the flight deck here. Overall, I think they did a really good job on this set. It looks a lot more accurate than I've seen on a lot of other sets. First, this is a Boeing aircraft. You can tell partly by the color and the fact that they have yokes and not side sticks. So the fact that they have these dice hanging, that's actually where the light switches are. So while it's not very common to see anybody hang anything from the light switches, you technically could do it. I have seen people put a Hawaiian hula girl on the dash. I have seen that. And a few other random things, but it's not very common, but it would be doable, and it does look pretty cool. The other thing that I noticed here, though, is that they don't have headrests on the back of the chairs here. That's something that we have, and you can adjust them in a few different ways. But overall, they did really well in that set design.
Nice to see you. Well, look at that. You two kids getting married this weekend?
Uh-huh.
That's fantastic. You know, if you needed an officiant.
Oh, actually, we might. Are you ordained?
Yeah. You're sitting in my ordination. You know how a boat captain can marry anyone? I'm a plane captain. It's the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
Yes, it is. What the hell do you know?
I know that you should be flying this plane and not talking garbage.
If you understood anything about modern aviation, you know these planes fly themselves. This baby is a technological marvel. And besides, my job isn't just about flying the plane. It's about connecting with the passengers.
Connect with us by not crashing the plane.
I'll connect however the hell I want.
There's actually a Cockpit confessionals that will be in the future sometime about this situation, about airline captains being able to marry people like boat captains are. So the reality is that airline captains cannot marry people, and neither can boat captains. I'm not sure where that rumor started, but we're not allowed to do it any more than any other normal person. So you'd have to have all the regular licenses or whatever you need to get somebody married. It's not a automatic thing that once you become an airline captain that you can marry people or a boat captain. As I was talking about earlier, some pilots do like to come back and chat with people during boarding. Some also will walk through the whole cabin and thank everyone for choosing to fly on their airline, which is something that is super, super old school. You don't see that very much in today's day and age, but there are people that will do that. However, they're not going to do that in the middle of the flight like you're seeing here. They'll usually do it on the ground for a few reasons. But the part about him letting people know that he's a plane captain even though he's in uniform,
I'm a plane captain.
that is 100% real, because you know that we have to tell people no matter what. I'm often asked about this a lot, about planes being able to fly himself, like what this guy says.
If you understood anything about modern aviation, you know these planes fly themselves. This baby is a technological marvel.
The truth is that the plane can do a lot of things by itself. There's something on the aircraft that I fly that has the ability to auto land, which means that we can get it set up and so it'll come in and stop down the middle of the runway and everything. The pilots do have to hit buttons and get things set up for it to do that, but the plane does have the capability of doing that. So that's why I was talking about in a long video ago about could an ordinary passenger land a regular commercial airliner? Yeah, they could. If there was somebody walking through the sequence of steps that you need to do in order to get the plane lined up to come in and land like that, absolutely, no problem. But this part about the oxygen masks and him grabbing the oxygen mask and taking a hit on it, there's two things that are wrong with this. First, he doesn't pull down on the mask when it comes out. Something that your flight attendants tell you and that you hear in the safety briefing every time you get on a flight is that when the oxygen masks come down, you have to pull on it. And the reason you have to pull on it is because you need to pull this pin out that is up there. Pulling that pin out gets the oxygen generator going. It's actually some chemicals that are up there that allow you to breathe oxygen. So he doesn't pull on that hard enough for that pin to be released so you can breathe on it. So that's something that most people don't pay attention to and the flight attendants tell you or that you listen to on your safety briefing, but hopefully you'll now remember it in case you ever do need it. The other reason is because up on the flight deck we have actual oxygen. We have a different type of mask. It has smoke goggles and all kinds of different things that we will need if we are ever in that situation. So there's an oxygen mask that you can get to anytime, and it's going to be a lot more oxygen versus this thing that you would breathe as a passenger. So if he really wanted to take a hit of oxygen, he would just go and take that. I know you're thinking, why do the pilots get the real oxygen and we get this chemical stuff? Well, if you want to get the good stuff, you just got to go to flight school.
Well, bad news, folks. Flight 1322 with service to Los Angeles will be delayed at least another hour.
I just want to throw up in my own house.
And then she says, I can't be with someone who's always somewhere else. So I say, boo-boo, I'm a pilot. And she says, no, emotionally somewhere else. Then, I don't know what she said. I had to end the FaceTime because we were landing. One more for the road, Scotty. I'm wheels up in 10. It's club soda.
So it's very rare that the crews actually ever have to make that announcement that you saw them making at the beginning there.
Well, bad news, folks. Flight 1322 with service to Los Angeles will be delayed at least another hour.
I have done it before because there was some massive delay, and for whatever reason, passengers, when they hear the pilot come on and make the announcement there, they believe it. If the gate agent tells them, they think that the gate agent is totally lying. So there's been times where there's one delay after the next that I've gone out and actually made the announcement to let people know, and I know the gate agents really appreciate that because passengers, when they hear it from the pilot, it all of a sudden becomes fact versus when the gate agent tells you. But the flight attendants, I've never seen a flight attendant do it. Something that was interesting though is the way that he's sitting his hat down here. I don't remember why, but I always flip mine over and I laid it the other way around. I think because when you lay it down this way, it actually will tip over one way or the other. The only problem with that though is that then the top of the hat gets really dirty. The other thing is that pilots are not allowed to go to any type of a bar, even if they're drinking juice. They're not allowed to go to any bar that's serving alcohol. And the reason being is for this exact situation here. You don't want to be accused of drinking when you weren't. The airline doesn't want you going around a bar or being near a bar where a passenger thinks that possibly you're going to get a drink before you get on a plane. So in some airlines, they actually have it written in the company policies or the manuals or whatever you call it. They have it written in there that you can't, while in uniform, ever go to any bar. Even if you're leaving, going on your way home, you're not allowed to do it. So sometimes what you'll see is pilots, when they're done working, if they're going to catch a flight going somewhere else as a passenger only, not even as a jump seater, but as a passenger only, there are some airlines that allow them to drink there. So they'll go in, change their uniform, and have a drink, and be in casual clothes, and then they're riding as a passenger and in no capacity as a crew member. They'll take off their badge, they'll take off everything, because then they're riding strictly as a passenger. And the reason they do that is for what I just explained. Now this part about him ending the FaceTime before landing.
I don't know what you said. I had to end the FaceTime because we were landing.
I have heard of pilots talking to people from the flight deck while they're flying a plane in cruise. However, every airplane that I know of through 10,000 feet on the way up or the way down, the Wi-Fi is disabled. I don't think it's to prevent pilots from talking to people while they're landing the plane, but I have heard of people FaceTiming and talking to people while they're in cruise. It's not something that passengers are supposed to do, and definitely not the pilots while they're working are supposed to do, but I have heard stories about it.
Sit down, Colin. We're done.
Can we please just discuss it?
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. Please return to your seats.
The seatbelt light isn't on. Right, but we're not experiencing any... Wow, that is a terrifying trick.
And the thing that took my Muay Thai to the next level was when I realized there are no levels. You want to fly a plane?
Okay. What are you doing?
Just taking a walk.
And what's in your pocket? Is that... Oh, a sock? Were you going to put a sock on the cockpit door?
Yeah, I'm doing it for all of you. It's bad enough Alan has to watch.
This is not okay. You cannot just go around putting socks wherever you want.
Captain Steve, who flies international, says he has sex all the time with the passengers. How come I'm not allowed to do anything cool? How come I can't bond with some 21-year-old bros or officiate a wedding or make it with some EDM hoe?
Excuse me. I'm in the house.
And I cannot wait to hear all about that. You think this is how I pictured my life? I grew up wanting to be a fighter pilot, not flying the puddle jumper to Vegas. All I wanted to be was a hero. And I'll just settle for one decent story. Please, don't cockpit block me. Ronnie, can I at least have my sock back? My foot's freezing.
So I have had flight attendants call me to put the seatbelt sign on. That is a true thing. There is no secret knock to do like what you saw there. There's no secret knock to do it, but I have had flight attendants call me and ask me to put the seatbelt sign on. More than anything, it's when I was flying the 747, when I was doing a passenger flight, and it got bumpy, and one of the flight attendants that was working in the back of the aircraft called me and said, "Hey, it's getting a bit bumpy back here. Can you turn the seatbelt sign on?" Part of the problem is that when you're flying cargo most of the time like I'm doing, sometimes we forget about just what level of bumpiness is a lot for us versus a passenger. So there was a case where we were flying and I thought, this is pretty smooth, but apparently it was bumpy to passenger standards, and the flight attendants called me to put the seatbelt sign on. So that does happen. I've also had it where flight attendants call when they're getting ready to do a meal service. They'll ask us to put the seatbelt sign on. Not always, but that way it keeps some people in their seats, so that way they can get up and down the aisles quicker and get everybody their food or beverages or all those things. I have had flight attendants call for that reason as well, but there's no special knock like you saw there. And I wish, but there is no turbulence button either. It would be cool if there was such a thing, but if you try to rock the controls, it just wouldn't move fast enough to simulate any type of turbulence.
Wow, that is a terrifying trick.
Unfortunately, in the US, we're not allowed to have friends on a plane, so we can't do something like this.
You want to fly the plane?
Okay.
I did talk about that, I think, in a Cockpit Confessionals a while ago about something similar to like that happening. But back in the 90s and before, I think in the US you could bring your friends and have them sit up there, but you can't do that now. However, overseas and a lot of international airlines, you are allowed to do that. If the pilot knows you, they could invite you. And as far as for this part,
Captain Steve, who flies international, says he has sex all the time with the passengers.
and now you know why I fly international. Oh, but the part with the flight attendant, sometimes you'll have flight attendants that will be the best wingman that you can have when you go out, because they'll run around telling everybody, oh, this guy's a pilot, and some people think that that's really cool. So some flight attendants can be your absolute best wingman, but some of them can be cockpit blockers.
Oh my God, who cares?
Okay, just calm down. Let me get you a nice warm beer.
Do not come near me, or I swear I will go passenger 57 all over this place.
You leave Wesley Snipes out of this.
You people are the villains, and you know what happens to the villains? They go down. Yeah, that's right. I'll take out this whole plane. They'll call me a hero. They will throw parades in my honor. Okay. Too far. I get it. That was too far.
Consider yourself grounded.
This is a pretty good story.
Making love in the cockpit would have been a better one.
I'm not sure if this guy's ever seen Passenger 57.
Or I swear I will go passenger 57 all over this place.
I did a Hollywood versus reality on Passenger 57, and Passenger 57 is the good guy, the police officer, Wesley Snipes. He's that guy that's keeping all the bad guys in check and from getting in trouble. But this guy is acting like the bad guy. And then this part right here, where you see people coming up because he's starting to make a scene, I think that's very true. Since 9/11, Americans aren't going to let somebody do something crazy on a plane anymore. It's just not our personality. We're not going to let that type of thing happen again. I think if you had a person that was acting very intense, like you see this guy doing here, people are going to get up and they're going to prevent that from getting out of control. That's very true. But what isn't accurate is this guy coming out of the flight deck. I'm not going to get into all the security protocols because I don't think I'm allowed to. But what was funny though is that you notice as he came out, he didn't have a sock on anymore. And the reason that's important to note is because I've been seeing a lot when I've been flying on passenger planes, people walking around planes in just their socks. That's so gross. The floors of these planes are disgusting. And what's even more disgusting is I've seen people walking into the bathrooms on these planes in just their socks. No crew member, you will notice, no crew member ever will ever walk around that plane in just their socks, and definitely not barefoot. You'll never see a crew member go barefoot. I mean, he took his sock off, but he put his shoe on. Just goes to show you, you should never ever walk around the plane barefoot. But yet, I see some people do it. It's so gross. So not even with a terrorist attack will a crew member walk around wearing no shoes. 100% facts. So if you're interested in being a pilot and you're worried about having to learn Muay Thai to take down a terrorist, you never have to worry about that. That's not something you ever need to worry about learning, but you will see from time to time pilots making these terrible dad jokes.
Consider yourself grounded.
And while that is a terrible dad joke, most pilots would love to be that witty.
What the hell?
Yeah, I've got a black light in the little dance floor in my apartment. Bye, guys.
Is that my sock?
This show is so funny, I wish they had more seasons of it. One thing they got wrong here is that the first officers don't have those types of leaves on the top of their hat like that. But that just goes to show you that even though first officers sometimes are broke and living in tiny little apartments or hotels, they're still able to pull the ladies everywhere they go. If you want to see the Hollywood versus reality on Passenger 57, I'll put a link to that video right there. And if you want to hear some true stories that I've heard over my years about crews doing crazy things, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.